Hey, what's up? Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. In this one, we're gonna paint this tiny, beautiful, foggy bridge scene. This is, I believe, the Tyne Bridge, and it's from the day they opened it. It's a picture. I don't know exactly who to give credit to, so I put down below a bunch of links crediting to different people who uploaded this photo, okay? But it's a beautiful scene. It shows you how to have different areas of varying levels of focus, a little sharper, a little blurrier, how you balance it with the foreground and having it a bit darker. So I hope you're gonna enjoy this one. Now let's jump into the process. Okay, so this time I really want to put a lot of emphasis on simplicity. You paint it as you see it. It's a fairly small piece of paper because we don't need a big piece of paper for that kind of thing. So I'm just gonna get started where I see things beginning from top to bottom. It's a very foggy and misty scene, and I'm just gonna place in some very careful lines here because they're barely gonna be visible. Now here is the beautiful part. We have the bridge coming through here all the way to this corner, and even if I have a bit of a shaky hand, it's not a perfect result, it still will look good as long as overall the perspective is correct, okay? This is what's important to remember. You don't have to be perfect with these things. As long as your overall lines work and they come out from the right place and get to the right place, that's all there is to it. Now, this the curved part of the bridge starts very early on actually, and the apex of the curvature is somewhere around here, while we have this other edge of the curve. So I'm just going to fill in this gap, and you can measure, you can try and compare the distance between this and this. I'm eyeballing it because I'm kind of trusting myself, but sometimes it's a mistake. So if you feel like you need to get it a little more carefully, go for it. Don't learn that bad habit from me. But in any case, here we go. This is kind of the bridge. This goes around, by the way, and all the way back. Okay, so you do want to make sure you get that part as well. So that's the curved part of the bridge. Again, it's not perfect, and you can really measure it to get it to be a little more accurate. I just really don't care. I enjoy I'll let the paint do the work later on in any case, so it doesn't really matter to me. And again, this was the opening of the bridge, so there was a bunch of people here on it that took me a while to even notice, so I'm not even going to put a strong emphasis on them. They're not as important as you may think. Now, we have the river itself, which is beautiful. And here's really where the beauty comes, I think, is there's going to be this shadow in the water, but this is going to stay, this area here is going to stay fairly light, okay? And you'll see how beautiful it's going to look because of that. Here we have a couple of houses, and then we have at the base of the bridge, we have these two, I don't know what you'd call these two towers, like so. That's Tower 1. And then on the other end, we have Tower 2. So this is its bottom part, like this. Don't be afraid to take your time with these complex geometrical shapes. Try to figure out, what's the most accurate way to sketch them in. A couple of rooftops here. We have the beautiful chimneys at the edges of the buildings. And this is pretty much it. It's going to look really nice, contrasting with the softer shadows here in the background. Softer reflections, rather. And this I'm going to leave to a minimum. There's not going to be a whole lot of details here, but we'll see about that. Just a bit of a rooftop here and there. You don't need much more than that. Now, another beautiful part here is that all of this is going to be highly simplified, as it's really in the mist or the fog. So I'm just going to put in a couple of lines for this bridge here, kind of like that, just to indicate where it is. And with that, I think we can get to painting. Now, an important thing to note, all of this area is super light. Okay, I'm going to keep it very light. So first wash, we're going to cover everything that isn't white. And by white, I mean this area of the sky, this reflection here in the water, this reflection here, of the super foggy areas, okay? And also I think we're gonna leave a highlight on the thing itself here, okay? Because it's gonna look nice and it's gonna lead us onto the bridge. And obviously maybe some highlights on the bridge itself here on the arch, okay? So this should probably be a little larger here, but in any case, let's get going and start working on the first layer. So onto the first layer, and because it's already black and white, there's no real point in overcomplicating things, so I'm just going to use a black paint here. I have my Paul Rubens palette, okay, and this is the black paint around here. The well is actually here in the mixing area. You'll be able to hopefully see well. So I'm just mixing in some dark gray, if you will, and I'm going to start with the middle, and it has to be super ultra light. Okay, this area is very, very light. So I want to make sure that I get it right. And the edges, I also want to make sure that I preserve their softness. So what I'm going to do is blend them in, blend their top edges into the sky with just a bit of water. And I'm actually going to tilt this. Okay, you don't see me do this often, but I'll tilt this, and hopefully this will help some of the paint to travel, but still keep it fairly light. Okay. Now, if it moves too much, you can always come back with a tissue and lift, but I think in this example I'm okay. And I'm going to tilt it back down. Now here we have to start reading the shape. So anything that is ultra light, I'm going to cover, and I'm going to leave just highlights for some white things, okay? So you can see there's an odd shape here and there, but I'm basically covering everything almost entirely, because this entire scene it's a bit dark. I mean, so going around the bridge, we're gonna leave. I think this is gonna be really cool. And don't be nervous. You know, I know that the paint dries and you have to make sure you finish working on it beforehand. Try not to be too nervous about that. Okay, that if you use wet enough paint, you're gonna have time to work on it. You don't have to be overly worried. Okay. That's my point here, and I always show my students, like, you see how when you use enough water, it survives, and you don't have to worry that much about the parts of it drying on you, and it really works. It really works. Okay, so keep it simple like that. Now here we have this. Sorry, I moved the paper a bit, but you can still hopefully you saw everything. This shadowy area here in the water. This could have benefited from actually pre-wetting or I don't know if pre-wetting, but just this area to help it blend more, but I helped it blend. And let's get rid of some of this. We'll have a lead in starting from here. And one of the most important areas really is this white spot you want to preserve, okay? The rest it's okay if you don't capture everything. I am going to, sorry, that's my alarm, it's a reminder. I am going to darken, to leave some highlights here on the rooftops that are closer to us, just a few of them, to help us focus on some details here, but not too much really. Here we go, and now I'm gonna really pick up the pace. This side of the bridge, the other side of the bridge. This can be a little darker from the bottom corner, so I'm just adding a bit of water. Then lifting back. This entire thing can be covered up, I think. So here we go, like so. And just like that, we got the first layer in. Next layers are going to be just a very gentle operation of darkening what's necessary, the very few areas that are necessary to make everything pop. Okay, we're going to have these very gentle shadows within the fog or mist. We're going to have this obviously darker and this part to the left a little darker. But what I do want to make sure I do right now is blend this edge a bit. And as I said, if it moves too much and you really need to have a clean well of water for that, I'm just going to wet it a bit, come back with some paper. Sorry, it took some time. And just go like this, you see? And we get rid of that edge. Okay, that's really a quick trick for you if you can't blend it fully, and that happens sometimes. I can even blend this edge like this as well. The toilet paper can do a really nice job at it. If you don't want this to be too harsh, you just kind of dab it a bit. Okay, so now let's let it dry and come back. So we're moving along nicely, and here what's beautiful is that we can separate this thing into sections. So we have this section here on the right, and we can tackle that, finish it, then work on this section, finish it, then work on this section. So it's a really nice little way of going through the whole thing. Now notice this bridge, how the top part is more clearer, and the bottom, the legs are a little blurrier. So what we can do, and this is a nice trick I just thought of trying out, let's pre-wet this area around this bridge, okay? And kind of like this. So the bottom part is going to be a little blurry, but the top part still going to maintain some visibility. And let's just put the paint in and see what happens. So this really moves and it's very blurry. This part of the bridge is a little more visible. And then the legs too get blurry. So it's just a nice trick for you if you want to, if you don't want to blur the edges or anything like that, if it's too complex for you, you just kind of allow things to blend a bit. Now I do think the top part is way too defined and it shouldn't be as dark. So I'm just going to go back with some water, merge it into the surrounding. We have a bit of a darker area around here and around this part of the bridge. Then we have this part that's the tower that's a little lighter, so I want to keep it that way. The water has a bit of lightness in them, and that's right around the bottom. So let me lift back some of the paint here, like so. We're going to keep this section a little lighter again. And with that, we can finish this part off, I think. We're pretty much done with it. Let's do this here. Just a couple of dots here and there, but the whole idea is to still preserve that fresh, blurry look, okay? So I can add some details here in the background. It's all gonna dry much lighter too. And this is it for the right section. And again, we're doing a highly impressioned view of it, so it's not gonna be obviously as accurate as the original one. We're actually putting emphasis more on the larger shapes here. So I'm going to start with the left section, and here under the bridge we have a bit of a shadowy area, and this really requires focus. You have to look at the different areas you're working on and ask yourself, how dark is it, how light is it, should I add more paint, should I darken, should I lift, and all of this happens kind of simultaneously, so it takes time to get a grasp of it. Don't worry if you're still not there. This is the bank of the river. This is where we'll spend a bit more time to make sure everything looks right. I will once again pre-wet some of these areas here. And then we'll do the reflection here, a little darker. I'm gonna lift back some of that darkness. It's gonna look much lighter once we add this dark section here. But in any case, we can connect that to the bridge itself. So I'm just gonna get started here. And I'm considering whether I should switch to a smaller brush. Let's do that. Let's have a bit more control. Another silver black velvet, same brand, just a different size. And this is very obviously darker than the background. So here we go. And I want to preserve that highlight I left here on the right, okay? Now, the easiest way to actually make this look like it is to get in all the lines you see. But you can't get everything 100%, so do your best. So you see this is a double kind of line, and it has all of the metal frame in it. Then we have the base of the bridge. My hand's a little shaky today. That sometimes happens, you know, if you don't sleep well. So you'll forgive me if, again, my lines are shaky, but it's going to be for the best because you get a live demo basically of how it doesn't matter. Okay, now there are a couple of highlights on this area. I won't deal with them now, okay? I will add them with my white gel pen later on because there's too much of it. And I don't want to start painting around these shapes. It's not going to look graceful too if you try and paint around all of these small weird shapes. So I'm just trying to get the overall impression. Again, I will add the highlights here on this side of the bridge. Okay. Now aside from those, we have these. You see the vertical lines going from top to bottom, and they actually cover the road of the bridge. So we have to get that in there as well. This is a little too light. Let's get rid of some of that. And then we have here the base or the something that goes down there, but then we have this tower that we want to preserve light, okay? And then it continues over here. Now I will darken while it's still kind of wet, the edge here of the bank of the river. It should be a little darker. The base of the bridge also should be a little darker. And if we go to this section, there's this shadow up top the tower, so we'll get that in, but then we can move back to the bridge. These rows of people are going to be fairly simple. It's just going to be 1 and 2, and I know that's highly simplistic, but you don't really need more than that. Now I will go back over this section. It's darker. Okay, so I'm darkening it. In fact, this whole thing is darker, so let's just get it darker, and that's it. This is still wet, I don't know. Let's add a bit of that same thing here, up top, the tower. And then all of this is getting to be fairly dark. So we have to work a bit darker here, but to maintain some highlights here and there. Also, I would darken the row of people here. And this whole thing hopefully starts to make sense. Again, it's not going to be the exact same thing, but hopefully we get a nice, interesting impression of the scene. So now we can start darkening this lower section in. We'll keep some highlights here on top of this rooftop. Get these a little darker, but the chimneys themselves are going to be fairly dark. And I'm really going out of my way to make sure I'm not repeating exactly what I see, because we're in the business of simplifying here. Had I taken more time and worked on this as a more detailed painting, I would definitely try and get it to be a little more subtle and all of the small details here. In the chimneys, there's a main chimney here, goes around. We're going to darken these rooftops, I think, a bit in just a few moments. I'm going to put some water in here and let this whole thing kind of melt together like that. And then I will add maybe a bit of a chimney here, a bit of a rooftop there, and I'm going to go and just slightly wet this area a bit to get it to be a little darker. There is this reflection here that I barely got, so let's get that in like so. Connect it to this side, and then blend the whole thing like so. And I'm gonna let this dry for a couple of moments and see if there's anything additional I want to add, but I'm quite pleased with how it looks, and I don't think there will be much changes to make here. So let's give it a couple of seconds, then come back and kind of conclude. Okay, so I'm happy that I took a break, but I actually did a bit of a list here of what to work on. So we'll get started. First, there's the issue of the foreground. Now notice how dark it actually gets in the reference photo and how not so dark it is here. Now, you can urge to darken this, but I do want to preserve some of that fresh look of not being fully dark. So let's just be very picky and choosy about where we darken. So I'm just going to choose a couple of spots that I see that are extra dark in the reference photo and work on them, because it's really, really easy to lose the beautiful effect you created, sometimes by mistake, by actually not going super fully dark. So I want to preserve that happy mistake. You know, I don't even know if I would call it a mistake, but it's just a nice little thing that you may not want to lose. Now, under the bridge, it is quite dark, so let's get that a little darker. Then spread it out with some more water and slowly blend it onto the edge of this tower that should be a little darker too. Okay, so I'm darkening it like so. And we'll just go through my entire list, and whatever needs or can benefit from fixing or improving, we'll do that, okay? Let me just darken a couple of other small, tiny areas here. Just things that I think will help this look better. So a lot of it, again, is kind of a sixth sense. Don't be too hard on yourself for like, how do I choose what to go darker with? What do I do? Like, it will develop with time. Okay, so don't worry about it necessarily. Just try to look at the reference, you will find your answers there. Now, we have these small little poles on the bridge. I'm starting from the end of my list, but that's still fine. So these kind of go in, you know, street light, public lighting, whatever it is. It is important, and it's gonna contrast really beautifully with the background there. I'm gonna add a bit more water. There isn't enough flow here. So like this, here we go, so much better. Same for the other side here, okay? So these look really good, and I think it's important to make that distinction. We have a part that's a little darker, should be in the shadow to the right of the left tower. And what this is going to do is bring out the tower a little better. So this area should be darker, okay? In fact, let's go like this. Okay, now what happened here is now we have a clearer shape of this tower. Okay, this is what I wanted, why I wanted to do this. We do have details at the back of the bridge, the far back of the bridge, and those are fairly light too, but I do want to get them in. So here we go, fairly watery. It looks a little dark, but don't worry, it's gonna dry a little lighter. Okay, I'm gonna give you a view of the final thing. We'll remove the tape together, we'll do everything together. But here we go, this is the back. A couple of bricks on the tower. That's something that I think will really enhance the look as well. So let's do that. But just, you have to be ultra selective here, okay? You can't go too detailed too, because then you'll lose the more impressionistic look here. Maybe also I'll add this kind of a line here, very gentle, a bit of a window here. That's it. That's all we need in this regard. Shading. Okay, yeah, we have the highlights on the bridge. Drop my pencil. That's fine. That I do want to get in. And these are mostly. There are some that are horizontal, like these, but then we also have a couple of vertical lines like this. Okay. And I do want to get those in. They are important. A couple of them here as well. What else? What else? And then we'll use this to fix their shape. So we put a highlight. Next up, we can put a dark shadow underneath it. Okay, and it'll just make a lot more sense. You see? And then we'll drop these vertical lines that you can see from the back there. There is a bit of a line here, making this stronger. Maybe add just a bit. I do like how these are fairly blended, but let's just add an indication for some of them to make them a little clearer, as you can see here. And I think with that being said, the sides of the, yeah, I think with that being said, we're done. Just one final touch that I do see here is these parts are a little darker. The highlight's mainly up top, okay? This is where the highlight starts. So now I can let this dry for a few more moments, remove the tape, and wrap up this vid. Okay, so we're officially done. I will just admit I added a couple of highlights here on the lights here on the bridge, and just two small lines to bring out the second tower. And also here at the edge, just a couple of touches to contrast the shadow at the back with the chimneys that are closer. I also signed this. Now let's remove the tape. I know everyone wants to see this stage, so let's do that. And a beautiful, beautiful painting with a clear border, clear edges will appear. So thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Let me know in a comment down below, you know, questions, anything you have to say. But now let's wrap it up face to face. So this is it for this one. I really hope you enjoyed it. As you work smaller sizes, you'll find that you have a bit less control. When you work larger, obviously you can have more freedom. Make sure you really have under control the level of wetness of your brush. If the brush is really wet, you won't have as much control. So what I suggest you do is use the consistency you need if it's very wet, but then just dab a bit of it off on the towel so that you get rid of some of the moisture, but you still have the light value you're after. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I want to thank you once again for watching, and I will put down below links to my beginners, to my frustration-free watercolor course, to my beginner's drawing course, to my new book on sketching people. I really want to thank you. A lot of people have joined, a lot of people have purchased the book. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope you're enjoying it. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, send an email, contact me on Instagram. I'll do my best to get back to as many people as I can. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in the next vid.